Professor Mark Williams. I'm the Head of Life Sciences in the College of Health and Life Sciences here at Brunel University London. So I'd like to start the day by thanking you for attending this event and by welcoming you to Brunel University London. This is a joint symposium organised by Brunel University and the Russian International Olympic University. The theme of the day is leveraging the Olympic Games for building sport organisations' capacity. I will also let you know that in addition to the very select group in the audience here, we also have a worldwide audience. So the event is actually being broadcast live, streamlined live, on the international platforms for sport and development. So hopefully we will have people from all over the globe tuning in this morning. We will be taking questions both from the floor in this particular room and questions from across the globe as well for all of our speakers this morning. So without further delay, what I would like to do is to introduce the Vice-Chancellor of Brunel University London, Professor Julia Buckingham, who is going to provide a welcome address this morning.
Thank you very much, Mark. Firstly, it's my very great pleasure to welcome you all to Brunel University London, and I hope you have an absolutely fantastic conference, whether you're based here in Brunel or whether you're tuning in from some far part of the world. That's great. Now, as you all know very much better than me, because I'm a pharmacologist, not a sports scientist, the Olympic Games have attracted the interest of academics over a very wide range of disciplines for a very, very long time, I think over a century. And the International Olympic Committee itself has a long history of supporting research. But it wasn't until 2013 that the Olympic Studies Centre in Lausanne focused an advanced research programme explicitly on the social sciences. And this programme, I understand, has 8 priority fields. And this conference is going to address just one of these fields, as you heard from Mark. And that's the engagement of the host city, countries' governing bodies and the population to ensure that the success of the Olympic Games provides a sustainable and positive legacy, which is a really fantastic, very, very important thing to be talking about. It also, of course, showcases a long-standing collaboration between colleagues at Brunel and at the Russian International Olympic University, which, of course, was generously funded by the Olympic Studies Centre. So it's fantastic to have all of you here together today. Now, getting people, sport organisations and the wider community to engage with the whole process of ensuring that their long-lasting legacies has always been at the heart of the Olympic enterprise. But the engagement of the Olympics is not confined to sport alone, but it spans an enormous range of human endeavours, including volunteering, promoting education and multicultural understanding, and overcoming the perceptual and physical barriers in the pursuit of physical and personal excellence. Now, unlike other sporting events, the modern Olympic Games have a very strong social agenda. And this agenda has a key goal of bettering the world through sport by spreading the universal human values of respect, excellence and friendship, and the Paralympic values of determination, inspiration, courage and equality. The national governing bodies of sport, or NGBs, play a central role in promoting the wider social and economic benefits of sport. In many countries, including the UK, the NGBs are the main sport agencies charged with the responsibility of providing services and managing significant amounts of public money. However, the way in which the NGBs engage with the Olympics is not widely understood, nor is the link between leveraging the opportunities presented by the Olympics and building the organisational capacities of the NGBs. Now, this conference brings together 2 distinct strands of knowledge and practical activities: the leveraging of mega events such as the Olympics and the organisational capacity. And in doing this, it creates a new field of inquiry and thus new conceptual and practical knowledge. programme blends conceptual and empirically informed thinking and offers a number of policy and practical recommendations for NGBs, organising committees and the International Olympic Committee. The conference promotes research for the real world by engaging with the main sport delivery agencies nationally and internationally. And I hope very much that it will give valuable theoretical and practical insights to all participants, whether you're here or whether you're in some far-flung part of the world. As you may be aware, in 2012, a Brunel-led consortium organised the first international convention on science, education and medicine and sport. And this was an event which drew over 2,000 participants from some 80 countries around the world. We were also very busy here at the time of the Olympic Games. We hosted the South Korean Olympic team and the Canadian Paralympic team, and we were very heavily involved in a number of academic, sporting and voluntary initiatives. I'm always very proud of my students, but I'm particularly proud of the 11 Brunel students that competed in 6 sports as part of Team GB in the London Olympics. And of course our namesake, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, featured prominently in the opening ceremony of the Games and also in the closing ceremony of the Games, when Usain Bolt, using a different Brunel, said how fantastic this university was in providing facilities for him to train. And we still have Usain here quite regularly when he's in the UK. I can always tell when he's here because my office overlooks the indoor athletics centre, and I can see a line of noses pressed against the wall looking in to see Usain. So it's a huge pleasure for me to welcome you all here today. I know some of you have come a very long way. I hope your travelling was successful, and I hope very much that the weather is not quite as hot as it was yesterday, but not quite as cold as it was last week. We have a host of very distinguished speakers that I'm delighted to welcome to Brunel. I won't go through you all by name because there's a long list of you, but it is fantastic to have you all here. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. So have a great conference and enjoy your time here. And do take the opportunity to look around the campus because we really have got some wonderful facilities, particularly for sports. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the Vice-Chancellor for her warm welcome address this morning. We'll move on to the first of our keynote speakers this morning. We're very distinguished to have amongst our audience and as first speaker Sir Craig Reedie. Sir Craig is a native of Stirling in Scotland. He completed an MA and a law degree from the University of Glasgow in the early to mid-1960s, and he received an honorary doctorate from the University of Glasgow in 2001. He also has an honorary doctorate from St Andrews, and most importantly, he has an honorary doctorate of laws from Brunel University. In 1992, Sir Craig became chair of the British Olympic Association and served in this role until 2005. And he was knighted by the Queen on retiring as BOA chair at that time. In 1994, Sir Craig joined the International Olympic Committee and was elected to the IOC Executive Committee in 2009. He was actually the first Briton to stand on the board since 1961. He became Vice President of the IOC in July 2012, and we're very honoured and very delighted to have him as our first speaker this morning.
Mark, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my notes here to say is to thank the Vice-Chancellor, but please tell her that I did, because she's obviously got a university to run. It's very nice to be back in Brunel, an institution of which I am proud to be an honorary graduate, and I have very clear memories of the quite protracted negotiations to attract the South Korean National Olympic Committee to come here as a holding camp before the London Games, and to the best of my knowledge that worked well for both South Korea and for Brunel. And can I add my own welcome to my colleagues from the International Russian University, and also say the International Olympic Committee, but Vasil tells me that they're still working their way through passport control at Heathrow at the moment, and we trust that they will be here. Now, I'm afraid I don't have a PowerPoint presentation to make to you because my computer skills are on the rise, but they haven't quite got round to marrying up designs and photographs with things that I have to say. So I'm just going to talk to you. I'm very interested in the analysis from our Russian colleagues of the excellent Winter Games in Sochi last year. And today offers, as the Vice Chancellor said, a very interesting programme, leveraging the Olympic Games for organisational capacity building. That's what Vasil told me it was all about. Now, while I'm particularly interested to hear about Sochi, I have to say I do know a bit about the organisation of the London Games in 2012. But I wasn't quite sure of the correct meaning of the phrase organisational capacity building. So I've taken this to be the effects of the two games, London and Sochi, and the wide potential benefits which accrued or should have accrued to the Olympic national governing bodies of sport in the two home host countries. And we should examine both the effects on the elite and performance areas of NGBs, as well as the more grassroots and development areas of their activities. And I'm also glad that for both games we will look at the impacts on the Paralympic movement, and I look forward to the presentations from Sergei Elisiv and Tim Hollingsworth. I'm also interested to listen to Professor Simon Shibley, as there is a great deal of scepticism on whether mega events, of which there is none bigger than the Olympic Games, can bring about an increase in sport participation. And I'll probably be more relaxed listening to Stuart Kellett, as the 2000 Games in Beijing and London 2012 helped bring about a revolution in sport in the United Kingdom, with practically everyone riding a bicycle, even me. For my 70th birthday, my 4 grandchildren gave me 2 presents. One was a picture of them, which is very nice, and the second was a bike. Now, those of you who have researched Dr. Beeching, who closed down the railways many years ago, fortunately, when he closed down the one between my village of Bridgeweir and the next village of Kilmacombe, 4 miles away, he tarmacked it, and that's a dead, flat cycling track. So I am on my bike, and I can get 4 miles longer and 4 miles back, unless the wind comes in the west, in which case I go 4 miles along, and then I stop and have a cup of coffee, and then I come back for 4 miles. But cycling is clearly the new sporting religion in this country. And finally, I will also try to project a little of the future by analysing the effects of the IOC's Agenda 2020 and its potential changes for NGBs. So let's look quickly at the results from the London Games on the elite and performance level. Now, I use the word results advisedly, as the British Team GB and the British NGBs all benefited from the performances of Team GB. Third in the medal table with 29 gold medals, 17 silver and 19 bronze medals, 65 in total, all enthusiastically welcomed by the British public. Now, these results did not appear as if by magic. They were the result of large financial support for the 6 years before the Games from the UK funding agency, UK Sport. The combination of exchequer and lottery funding allocated to elite sport for the period of roughly 7 years through 2012 increased after we won the right to host the Games in 2005 from a budgeted £300 million to £550 million. This allowed well-organised NGBs to employ good coaches, good support personnel, and to set up excellent pre-Games preparation arrangements. and all of this helped. Now, the second benefit, I think, was the very extensive media attention in the run-up to the games and during the games themselves. This, in my view, was invaluable to NGBs. All the media efforts, television, print or digital, meant that the British public could not miss sport. 90% of the British population watched the BBC coverage, with 52 million people watching at least 15 minutes of the games. And in this country, these are huge figures. The increased options to governing bodies also give them a benefit, as they try to develop and enhance their own commercial programmes and to attract new sponsors. BBC Television also continue a bit of the pre-games undertaking to cover Olympic sports. There was a very happy additional benefit post-London, and that was the continuation of substantial elite sport funding for our successful sports for the next Olympiad until Rio in 2016. Now, there will be a debate on whether some of that money should have gone to the less successful sports, and that's one that I think UK sport have to deal with. Coincidentally, it also produced an increase in funding and support for winter sports, so that Sochi was a hugely successful games for Team GB, and we are not really a winter sports country. Can I turn then to the sports legacy side? And I think this is vital for NGBs. The following statistics come from an IOC fact sheet publication in July 2013, 1 year after the Games, under the heading of the sports legacy. And it's important that this came from the IOC and not from the London Organising Committee, which may have had a slightly rosier view of the situation. The London strapline was inspiring a generation to help to connect to sport and to help young people with access to sports facilities, competition, coaching and sporting events. There were a whole raft of legacies. There was a new youth sport strategy with an aim to create 6,000 new community sports clubs. There was a Sport England policy called Places People Play. The school games was to be developed. 12,000 schools took part in the school games in the year 2012. There was a government investment of £150 million in school sport. There was a further and very substantial planned investment by Sport England of £493 million to grassroots sport between 2013 and 2017. Surveys after the Games showed that 750,000 more people were playing sport more than once a week than in December 2011, with women's participation up by 500,000. London itself had the London Mayor's Participation Programme, designed to upgrade sports facilities with an estimated benefit to 200,000 living in London. And for cycling, the annual Ride London event has developed into a true cycling festival in the capital. Don't try to drive a car anywhere through the middle of London when Ride London is being organised. And there were two developments which came principally from the organising committee. Good morning, and nice to see you. If you don't mind, in the words of a British comedy, I will say this only once, but I'll let you see the first one pages. So there were two developments which came principally from the organising committee. A charity called Sported, S-P-O-R-T-E-D, developed by Sir Keith Mills, the London Deputy Chairman, which benefits over 2,000 grassroots community sport clubs. And there was international inspiration, which was the London Organising Commission's donation to the rest of the world. It was an international charity which took sport to 12 million young people in 21 countries all around the world. And in all honesty, we tried to persuade the IOC and future bidding cities, that they should pick up on that effort and continue. But so far we haven't been hugely successful. In addition to these specific legacy examples, there are some generic and physical benefits which should work well for NGBs. The overall success of the Games and enhanced publicity and public interest in sport, and that clearly is an advantage. One of the original justifications behind the whole London bid was to put sport up the political and social agenda, and I think that was achieved. There was a raft of new sports facilities in London. Our capital city was very badly served by sports facilities, but we can now make use of the Olympic Stadium, the Aquatic Centre, the Velodrome, which is built on the site of an existing cycling facility, the Copper Box, which is now a community multi-purpose sports centre, Eden Manor, a new sports centre across the road from the Olympic Park, the National Sailing Centre at Weymouth, and the Lee Valley Whitewater Centre, all now being used, although the conversion of the stadium has been slow and expensive. And as a slight digression, as I flew over the Olympic Park this morning, you could recognise how it's all developing. I started to fly over it before anybody had taken a spade to dig a hole in the ground. So it's nice to see it develop into a park to be used for sport, and now to see it being developed in the main for community use. The roof of the aquatic centre, it used to be called a swimming pool, it's now called an aquatic centre. It's still there. It should be used to the Tokyo organising committee who were thinking of using the same architect for the new stadium. But that, at the time we developed it, there was one 50-metre pool in London. I took the British team to the Gold Coast in Australia before the 2000 Games, and we were there maybe 2 years out. And I spoke to the nice young lady who ran sport on the Gold Coast, and she said, which of the 23 50-metre pools would you like to use? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question. So they had 23, all based in schools, and we had one. I wonder why Australians win a lot of swimming medals. We've now got two 50-metre pools, and they're both in the Olympic Park. There's also, for NGBs, the opportunities to encourage greater participation. Now, the inevitable pressures on being able to cope with the greater public interest immediately after the Games was a real challenge for NGBs, but a nice challenge to have to face. Rowing, for example, which was hugely successful in London, had a real problem with all the people who suddenly wanted to row boats. You actually need to have a boat, you need to have water, you need to have organisation, you need to have safety and all the rest of it. So the message for the future is if you are running a major event, then the national governing body should be ready to make use and to make value out of the increased interest there is in that sport. Now, I have to say that not all of these legacy initiatives have survived the initial enthusiasm. Many require investment by government or local authorities. Other pressures on sports funding have and will emerge. And as we move further from the Games, the joy of that event and the enthusiasm it generated is beginning to dissipate. But the 19.5 years it took from the original London bidding decision to winding up the Games organising committee were entirely worthwhile. The London Games did put sport up the social and political agenda and gave many people in sport in this country the opportunity to achieve what they had only previously been able to dream of. One tangible example, now in a particular field of interest for me, was the creation and funding of an independent national anti-doping organisation. UK Anti-Doping has gone on to establish itself as one of the leading anti-doping organisations in the world and is much admired for its skills and its technical and educational programmes. And as I finished London, and I finished this splendid weekend in the warmer part of these islands, I live in Scotland, the grass is entirely green, not brown. That's because it's been raining for the last 6 months. But on Monday night, we have what I think is officially called a reunion, and will no doubt degenerate into something else. Because Monday is 10 years to the day from when we won the Olympic Games in Sydney in 2005. So if I was you, I would avoid anywhere near the pub opposite the what's it called, the Museum of London, somewhere in the east end of the city. But it should be nice to see lots of old friends. But there can be no doubt, if you look at the London experience, that hosting an Olympic Games is a God-given opportunity to get things agreed and completed that would otherwise be impossible. What our two countries do in the future is an interesting challenge, and I wonder what may come out of today that we know. So what does the future hold? The IOC have reacted to a number of rather sensitive issues, many to do with the bidding process for the Games, and many arising from the bidding process for the 2022 Olympic Games, when we started with 6 potential applicant cities and finished with 2 candidate cities. And the Agenda 2020 process is an attempt to review our whole portfolio and to try to bring it up to date. The process started with a 4-day think tank of the executive board locked away in a hotel in Montreux in Switzerland. Even this, a sign that we would not be diverted from our normal work in our normal headquarters in Lausanne. The programme was and has been driven by our new president, Thomas Bach, who had clearly thought through what he wanted to change and how significant these changes should be. 14 working groups were set up to deal with a whole range of different issues, from bidding for the Games all the way through to the structure and organisation of the IOC itself. Other interested bodies within the Olympic movement, within sport, within the commercial and political world, and from the general public were invited to contribute. And the end result was over 40,000 contributions and a final set of 40 recommendations, all approved at the IOC session in Monaco in December last year. The process of implementation is now underway. Now, not all 40 recommendations will have a specific impact on NGBs, and I've tried to list the following changes which I think are most likely to require some thought or understanding. The first is the bidding procedure. I accept that future Olympic bids from either GB or Russia are currently unlikely, although I am intrigued by the continued possibility of the name St. Petersburg, which just seems to be out there in the ether. And maybe at lunchtime somebody can tell me if this is just a rumour, probably well organised or real. But for any national Olympic committee which is going to bid, and for any city which is going to bid, the national governing bodies of Olympic sport are essential to the process of establishing the technical planning and presentation of the bid. The biggest change is the creation of what the IOC calls the invitation phase. Instead of bidders operating entirely to the IOC blueprint with its whole range of technical requirements, bidders, when they are considering entering the bidding process, can come to the IOC and explain just how the Games might fit into the vision and long-term plans for their chosen city. This process will allow the IOC to explain a more flexible set of requirements and procedures, with a potentially wider spread of venues being possible, and an encouragement to use existing or temporary or demountable venues. There are many other changes proposed governing legal and financial issues, but the wider range of possibilities when planning venues will be central to NGB thinking. Now, two comments. The word demountable is a little bit of a trendy word. We designed demountable facilities, and they turned out, I have to say, to be more expensive than we thought they would be. And then we found it quite difficult to sell them. I tried to sell a 25,000 seat basketball hall to Rio. but all they had to do was take it down, put it in its box, ship it all the way to Rio, stick it up again, it solved the problem. But unfortunately, they declined that kind of offer. And I think too, and this is a very personal view, that the IOC has had, in my view, the gold standard for the selection of host cities for major events. But it did it on a very detailed technical requirement. We said to people, this is how the games should be organized. Now you come and tell us two things. First of all, why do you want to run the games? And secondly, how are you going to run them? But that's how we want you to do it. And our feeling is that perhaps that rather strict philosophy hasn't fitted terribly well in the experience we've had for the Winter Games in 2022. I suspect the issues for 2022 with some of the European withdrawals were more political than our system, but we were criticised for the degree of technical requirements, when in fact I thought that was rather unfair. Anyway, there has been no doubt that the new approach seems to be welcomed by applicant cities. And certainly if you look at the cities currently organising games, Pyeongchang are looking at it, and Tokyo most certainly are looking at it by changing their original plan to use existing venues and to spread them a little more widely. But it saves a modest $1.7 billion. And I'm sure the Tokyo Metropolitan Government and the taxpayers of Japan will be delighted with that figure. Now the second change for NGBs, I think, is the Olympic programme. Now, I would have thought that anybody running an NGB should be interested in this, particularly when you have athletes who have the ability to compete in the Olympic Games. Some very brief statistics. We are now putting in the rule book stated limits. Summer Games will have 10,500 athletes, 5,000 support personnel, and 310 events. Winter Games, 2,900 athletes, 2,000 support personnel, and 100 events. Winter Games is more technically complicated than Summer Games, hence the proportionally greater number of support personnel. We're also moving to an events-based programme as opposed to a sport-based programme. Now, the evidence of that was that we could always change fairly easily the winter programme because there was always space to do it. If you wanted to bring any new sport, it was relatively easy to do. It's actually quite hard to find another sport played on snow and ice, but once you found it, it was possible to build it in because there was space. The Summer Games was entirely different. The only way we could change the programme was to change the sport. And that's a pretty brutal exercise. You know, if you have 26 or 28 sports and you want to change and say, we'd like to bring in another one, but unfortunately one of you has got to go. I mean, that is almost certainly a recipe for prolonged debate and discussion, particularly with the sport that is seen by the media to be in front of the firing line. If we do it on an events-based basis, it should be possible to get round that issue. There is also, and this is happening now in Tokyo, for the first time, we're allowing organising committees to have the right to propose one or more additional events. And the IOC have been very smart by asking the Tokyo Organising Committee to conduct that exercise. So they have been inundated with requests from 26 international federations, which means that the IOC don't have to do it. But their recommendations will come to the Executive Board quite soon, I would think, and the final decision will be taken by the IOC session in Rio in 2016. Now, the next one I think is really important, and that is gender equality. We want to aim for 50% female participation. Every NOC which came to London had women in the team. Some don't have too many women, but every one of the NOCs contained them. And that's a real step forward. Delivering the same in Rio will be a challenge. And we also want to encourage the inclusion of mixed gender team events. Now, I can stand here with a big smile on my face as I persuaded a reluctant president of the IOC to take mixed doubles and badminton into the programme in 1995. And that's the best example of equality in the Olympic programme. It is the only sport at the moment where men and women compete on the field of play and interact with each other. So a really good woman can make the man on the other side of the net look like a monkey. And that's almost my definition of equality. And the mixed doubles has been a terrific event. And now there are more and more sports looking at how they can develop this by introducing that kind of policy. The next one comes under the heading of protecting clean athletes. And again, NGBs should have a clear interest in this. The IOC have established a $20 million fund. Of this, the first $10 million is for athlete-centred scientific anti-doping research. I was asked as president of the World Anti-Doping Agency to get the governments of the world to match the $10 million from the IOC, and we managed to get 6. So we will get 6 of the 10. That creates a fund of about 12 in the hands of the World Anti-Doping Agency, and the other 4 is currently being invested by the IOC. I made the mistake of saying we wanted to use it for innovative research, and of course all the scientists told me, don't be stupid, all research is innovative, so you never learn every day. The second $10 million is to fight corruption and match fixing, and already steps are underway for the IOC's involvement. Now there are further proposals that are really athlete-centred. One is for athletes who only receive medals after the games, and how you actually present these medals. Again, we've been quite lucky in Britain. We've tended to win arguments at the Court of Arbitration for Sport against international federations who got the rules wrong. And traditionally, we have a welcome home party in Buckingham Palace with our patron, Her Majesty the Queen. And if you can't have a medal presented in the fencing hall or the cycling hall or whatnot, then in Buckingham Palace, in front of the whole of the British team, presented by one of the royal family, is a pretty good alternative. So the IOC is pretty keen that athletes who lose out, mainly for legal reasons at games, should be properly dealt with thereafter. And we are insisting that what's called the athlete's experience is to be made central to the organisation of the Games. And again, from an NGB point of view, it should be greatly helpful to NGBs if they can say to promising young athletes, if you get to Olympic Games, you are central to the delivery of the whole Games. We're also going to invest vast amounts of money in an Olympic television channel. This is intended to provide a platform for continuous exposure of Olympic sport and athletes beyond the Games. One of the problems we have is that we are the only show in town for 3 weeks every 2 years, winter and summer. It's the 2 years in between that we really wish to develop. The channel can certainly make use of the huge and very extensive archive material that the IOC has. Initially, the channel will be a digital channel, but established in such a way that it could easily be adopted as a full linear television program. And the announcement earlier this week that European rights will be with the Discovery Channel from the United States may well, because of the wide, extensive establishment of channels, nothing a little easier. We also have the Youth Games. Again, that should be of interest to NGBs, and I'm sorry I can't give you any more information, because the IOC isn't quite sure what it wants to do with the Youth Games. There will be a review with stakeholders on the positioning of the Youth Games. There's only been one major decision taken, and that's to move the date of the Summer Youth Games to a non-Olympic year, so that the 4th Youth Games scheduled for 2022 in Buenos Aires will actually be held in 2023. Now, there are many other recommendations dealing with sustainability, good governance, cooperation with outside bodies, and the IOC's own rules. There is a constant process of implementation, all of which is occupying much attention and efforts of the IOC administration. But the importance of the Games is central to everything we do. NGBs, through their national Olympic committees, are integral to every Games. The Olympic movement gives them the best opportunities they have to develop their own sport in their own countries. The future Games in Rio, Pyeongchang, Tokyo, or Almaty or Beijing will offer further extended opportunities. I hope that this conference and its wide range of views and experiences will be of value to NGPs, both in an examination of the opportunities they have enjoyed from London and Sochi, and in the continued opportunities that will arise in our ever-changing world. Whether these come from Agenda 2020 or the inevitable progress of development in sport, and hopefully its ever greater influence on the quality of the lives of young people all over the world. Thank you very much for your attention.
I think we've got 5 minutes spare. Are there any questions, either from the floor or from our worldwide audience?
Can I ask about the Olympic channel? It sounds really interesting. Is that about broadcasting live, or is that about giving sort of depth to the, you know, the whole heritage of the Games and all the interesting angles around, you know, life around the Olympics?
Yep. That can and will be done. The material that we have is archived material, and I'm sorry you can't run a regular digital television channel just showing archived material. There's a limit to the number of times you would want to watch Jessica Ennis win the heptathlon again and again and again. What it will not do is come and produce its own content. What it will do is collect news access, principally from its contracted broadcasters. Because if you're going to be an updated channel, if you're trying to bridge the gap between Games, you need current news information. And it will also be able to show sport which is run by other right holders, by the IAAF, by FINA, by the Badminton World Federation. So we're not production ourselves, we are using them. And you need good editorial control. The budget is many hundreds of millions of dollars, and we're currently recruiting the staff we need, which will be based in Madrid.
Thank you. Do you have any views on whether the IOC has, whether it be a political or a social responsibility in terms of who's hosting the Games? I'm thinking now the European Committee just agreeing now to be hosted in Baku, Azerbaijan, with the political situation there, and obviously Almaty is still one of the issues. As part of Agenda 2020, it talks very much about the values of the Olympic movement. Do you feel that's part of the role of the IOC to make those judgments?
Yes, and we have done something about it. We're extending the Olympic Charter to cover, for example, sexual orientation and whatever in the rules of the Olympic Charter, which candidate cities and countries sign up to. Our new president has been able to present a philosophy which says we are not a political organization, but we do understand that practically everything we do has a political effect. So we want you to be as wise as you possibly can, but please don't get involved with us for the 16 days of the Games, stay away. And if that's done intelligently and nicely, it is, in my view, an entirely sustainable argument. For other institutions in the Olympic movement, whether it's the European Olympic Committees in Baku or whether it's the Pan American Games in Toronto, they will probably take their own views. I have to say, I think that the overall view that the IOC has will eventually permeate through. There is at the moment, if you want to check your YouTube videos, a video from the Canadian Olympic Committee on LBGT behaviour of athletes in their country, and they're hosting the Pan American Games. So I think the movement is underway. You should also, of course, remember that nothing excites the non-sporting media more than complaints about a host city before the Olympic Games. There was an absolute furore, particularly in the American media, before Sochi, about the end of the world is nigh. And do you know what happened in Sochi for 16 days? Zero. Nothing. But you would have wondered in the build-up to the games, whether you were making any sense at all.
Okay, time for one final question, possibly. If anybody has a burning question to ask? No? Can I remind those watching the live stream to send in questions during the day, and we'll try and read some of them out. We'll compile them for the panel discussion at the end of the day. So can I thank Sir Craig Reedie again for a very interesting and very informative talk, which I think demonstrates quite nicely that PowerPoint is not always essential. Thank you, it was very interesting.
I now look forward to listening to everybody else. Thank you very much.